Hello and welcome back to the Irish Hunting Podcast, the number one place for your hunting, fishing and country sports stories from around the world. Stick on the kettle, crack open a beer, pull up the feet, relax and enjoy. Paddy Smyth, welcome down to County Kildare and the Irish Hunting Podcast. Thanks for coming down.
Thanks very much for the invite. Privileged to be here.
You probably see here on the table in front of us, this is like a hunter's delight here. There's knives and blades and different materials everywhere, and we're going to talk through a little bit of them in a very short while, because as we probably see here, we've a lot to discuss. But first and foremost, Paddy, tell us a little bit about yourself. How, in the name of God, did you start making knives?
Most makers will tell you it's a madness. It's a form of madness. But how did I get into it? Answer is I don't know. I had motorbikes for years, and there was only so much polishing and cleaning and fixing you can do on the bikes. A friend of mine was into movie knives more so than I was, and he was trying to get a movie knife from the Book of Eli. Couldn't get it anywhere. Normally you can get replicas online. So I said, I'd make you one. Barry, no bother, I'll make you one. I was like, fuck, what am I after doing? But anyways, long story short, got a piece of stainless, not necessarily heat treatable, but we made a replica, and we did it, and I was like, shit, like something in this. So I made another one, and I made another one. They weren't necessarily that great at the start. I should have bought a couple of the older ones, but I didn't. But it's an evolution, I suppose I can say. So from what I thought was a hunting knife, or what I thought was cool, is not basically cool.
And I suppose your background, you're a chef by
so I started off
by
chef.
trade.
So when I left school, I went straight into working in hotels and restaurants. I started off in Tullamore, a place called the Phoenix Arms. It's gone long ago now. So I started off washing pots and pans in there and helping the chef, and it evolved from it happens very quick. So usually when somebody doesn't come in, can you do this? Yeah, you jump on and start cooking, So it evolved from there to I went to college part-time, because Leaving Cert wasn't that great, to be fair. So when I got into the chefing, you come up through the ranks very quick, and you tend to get poached from job to job, and it brings you around the country basically. So I was chefing in different places up and down the country up until 2007. Ended up in Roscommon. I actually only went to Roscommon to work for 3 months. I had a job got on a cruise ship. I had a head chef job got on a cruise ship, and ended up not going. Stayed. It was the Abbey Hotel in Roscommon I was working in at the time. So when it came to going, they said no. How much is it going to cost? You're not going anywhere for that. So I didn't, to be fair, and met my wife and ended up staying. And I think it's probably the best thing I ever did, to be fair. So
it was a mixture of money and women. The relation of money and man.
Yeah. And to be fair, it's worked out really well. So to be fair, even when I went for the job on the Pinot cruise ship at the time, they were saying, hey, Paddy, why do you want to go and work on a cruise ship? Sounds like you've got a nice little life going on down there. And he was right. He was. Yeah. So
I suppose that's your background in terms of blades. Yeah. That's obviously the job. So it's a nice, I suppose, tie over. When did you, I suppose, realise that there's a potential? I suppose I know it's a labour of love first and foremost.
Sure.
But the tie over into a business.
2013. So around 2012, it kind of like, Jesus, something to this. We better look at, where can it go? Because at that stage, there wasn't anybody really in Ireland making knives. Rory O'Connor in Cork was the only one that I could find. Now, since that, there's a lot of guys popping up, but at that stage there was nobody really in, I suppose, commercial capacity doing it. And also, through research, it was difficult to get materials, it was difficult to get tools, it was difficult to get the stuff that was needed for making. So, again, my original pieces were all done by hand. I mean, all done by hand. The bevels were done by files. Grinders and stuff like that. You get them from America. You could get big machines, but you're talking thousands of euros for 272 belt grinder at the time. So my original pieces were done by files. I made a gas forge, we'll say, but you could only heat treat carbon steel with that. Carbon steel, you could heat treat it at maybe 860 degrees. You had to get it and then quench it with oil. There's no real way of knowing whether you had it at the right temperature or not. You use colour, and normally the high carbon steel, you know it's ready when it goes non-magnetic. So when you stick a magnet to it, it doesn't stick.
Okay.
You're ready to go, you quench. So the stainless steels were a bit more technical. I wasn't able to do stainless steel at that stage because, you know, stainless steels, you're minimum 1,000 degrees to get them to where you can quench it or properly heat treat it.
And I suppose I just find it's all fascinating, but no one taught you any of this.
Oh no, it's completely self-taught. There isn't anywhere you can learn it. It's trial and error, and a lot of, like, I can show you, I have a drawer with mistakes, but the best, I suppose, developments have come up from mistakes.
Yeah, that's like
and
anything.
most of the developments are as a result of a mistake. The claw, for example, was a longer blade originally, and I fucked up blade by grinding it, or when you overheat something, you burn the steel, and you've lost the. Now what I do is I heat treat my blades and then grind. Some guys grind and then heat treat.
And what's the benefits, pros and cons of doing either or?
There's if you grind and then heat treat, you've got probably more risk of warping.
Okay.
After each. So there's no real, I won't say there's a right or a wrong way of doing it, because each different people will find different ways of doing things. That's just what I do. So warping, I suppose, is your biggest problem after quenching. Now the stainless steels, I find, are a little bit more forgiving because you don't quench into oil, you plate quench.
What does that mean?
So that means you bring, so this, for example, is the claw, it's ABL steel, bring it up to 1,060 degrees, and it needs to be quenched back to room temperature as quick as possible. So basically that's brought back down to room temperature within less than 3 minutes. So what I use is aluminium plates under pressure in a press, and you use compressed air to bring it back down to that temperature within that 3 minutes, which is hard to do when you're doing batches. So I can do 5 of those at a time under I use an old book press, believe it or not, with aluminium plates that have been kept in the freezer until I'm using it, until I'm ready to quench, and I can do 5, 6 at a time and bring it down to room temperature with it. Now again, I use a lot of compressed air. I have 2 compressors, or I'm actually one now. It's a 200 litre compressor to give me enough air to get it down really quick. Okay. So the aluminium is the best thing to do because it's a conductor. It sucks the heat out really quick, so it gets it, Whereas the high carbons are a little bit more risky of warping when you put it into your 900 degree blade into oil.
Yeah.
And again, the steel is moody. Some days it'll work with you, some days it won't. And if it starts to fucking be moody, you just go, fucking leave you alone now today. Just leave it, because But for consistency, I kind of heat treat before grinding, and then it gives me a little bit. Now, you have to be careful once you heat treat and you're grinding. You gotta make sure that you keep it cool, that you don't. You can mess up the temper if you overheat it while you're grinding. But you'll know by colour as well. You start to see colour change while you're grinding. You're too hot, so you quench or you dip it in water.
I suppose we're looking at an array of different type of knives, all different ergonomics, blade types. So how did you get, like, obviously that's a much weightier knife, and how did you must be talking to people on the ground, hunters, people into bushcraft.
So 100%. What I'm familiar with is using a chef's knife. I can use a chef's knife, and I know the needs and the purposes and the different uses. A little bit about bushcraft. I know what bushcrafts need to do. I did a bit of camping in my younger years, and a bit of kind of, as I thought, I was Rambo, and I could go out and live in the wilderness for weeks at a time. Well, we did for when we were kids, and maybe in our teenage years we would have went.
Every good childhood, as to say.
Yeah. We, I had what I thought was Rambo knives at the time, and they were okay, but I'd been arrested if I was caught with them.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the end user to me is the most important person. So I consult and involve and take advice of, well, what does this need to do? So I suppose from the hunting perspective, what I thought was a hunting knife was Rambo.
Yeah.
That's what I thought was a hunting knife. But
Yeah.
realistically, again, aesthetically beautiful, very nice pieces, but completely impractical,
Yeah.
you know, for any kind of use.
And I suppose you've mentioned the claw here, so we'll start, I suppose, with this one, right? And we'll start kind of nipping through them.
Yeah.
How did this concept
to be fair,
come to life?
there's one person to thank on the claw, and that's David Dunn.
Yeah.
So I suppose David Dunn has been instrumental with the deer stalking specific knives from the start. So the first one was the Pro Stalker, which is that one there.
This one?
Yeah, that's a variant of the Pro Stalker.
That is beautiful in the hand.
Yeah, and that was, you're going back 2016, 15, 16 for that piece. It started off with 14C28N steel, which is quite good. But I was really only getting into being able to heat treat those high carbon stainlesses at that stage, which is a lot more technically advanced than, so you can, than the high carbons are a bit more forgiving, you know. So
in fairness, there's no better man than David. He's gone through a lot more deer than most people have seen. So and this specific one here, like we talked about, ergonomically it feels really nice, and how it's used is a different day's work. But it's the sheath as well. It's a Kydex, is it? It's
Kydex, yeah. So it's a thermoplastic. So basically, it's really only in the last 2 years that I'm happy with the development of it. So again, there's nowhere you can really learn how to do this. There's videos on YouTube and stuff like that, but again, there's so many different ways of doing it. I've developed my own process. It works quite well. It's a little bit different maybe than the normal way of doing it, but it's just my way. Again, there's no right or wrong way of doing it. It's what works for you, you know. So Kydex, it's clean, it's easy to maintain, it's not going to distort unless you boil it.
Okay, it's interfere over it essentially, yeah.
Yeah. Now I have had a case where a customer had a suspect TB beast in the wild, and he brought it home and he threw the whole lot into a pot of boiling water.
Okay.
And then rings me, he's like, Paddy, this has gone all out of shape.
It's a mystery.
I'm like, what did you do? I threw it into a pot of boiling water. I said, okay, well, that's your problem. No, we got it sorted, we fixed it up, we got it done. But other than that, that's its only limitation. Like, you can wash it, you can pretty much take it apart. It's, I suppose,
and that, you'll hear that probably in the background there. That's the knife essentially clicking into the sheath. That you can have, and some of them are not that, what would
not
you say,
that clicky, yeah. But again, it's
up to the personal use and preference.
The reason for the tighter the click, it's not going to fall out.
Yeah.
Basically, so there's one there that just customer said, I don't want to have it as a tight click because for sound.
Yeah.
Which is understandable, but again, I couldn't guarantee that if you jumped over or was upside down or something, it'd fall out. Which it won't, but again, it's just to mitigate the risk of that.
Yeah, and obviously the looser is you've different. As Rob is having a peep there.
Sorry, just what percentage? So you have leather and the Kydex.
Yeah.
Now, in the last couple of years, are people going more leather or Kydex?
It's gone more Kydex. So in the last year, as I said, I haven't made a leather sheath. Actually, I did. I made one this year for a hybrid. The rest has all been Kydex, and it probably started more so in the UK, where guys were saying, "Listen, I need something a bit more hygienic. Need a little bit more kind of. I don't want to be worried about taking it out in a week's time and the sheet being rancid or covered in mould or whatever." So I would say probably 90% Kydex at the moment.
And just in terms of leather, because I have a piece of your leather here. How do you buy your leather? Where do you source it? And
so the leather,
how does it go from that into that?
It's pure torture.
Could you just talk us through the process of that?
So basically, the leather is bought I buy it by the hide, and I've a supplier in the UK that I trust 100%. I'll ring him up and I'll say, I need X. And he'll say, I know exactly what you want. I've got this in chestnut. I've got it. It's all Italian leather, or he's got some Maranello leather, so it's the leather that the Ferrari uses, I think, in their cars. So
Okay.
it's high-end, good stuff. It's flawless. So leather is graded. So Irish people say, why don't you use Irish leather? Well, there is no place I can get it. There's no tanneries left. Like every town in Ireland at one stage had a tannery. 10 yard in Tullamore. That was leather processor. It's gone. Plus, you'll find that Irish cows will be going through bushes and hedges and fucking barbed wire. They'll have scars and stuff like that. There's no scars in any of these leather. Which I prefer. I like a little bit of character on it. You know, I like a little bit of a story to tell, which, to be fair, they're all flawless. But so it's you can't make this any other way other than hand. It's all cut out by hand. It's finished by hand. I have a leather stitcher, but I will only do that for when I'm doing a batch. So the rest are all hand stitched, which is, you know, I can drill out the holes and then my hands are fucked from pulling the strings.
Seen that, don't you? Plenty of war wounds there.
Yeah. So,
and then in terms of handles, what is that? Is that G10?
Yeah. So most of the hunting knives would have what I'd call a composite material, which it's forgiving when you're in the wild. It'll get wet. You don't have to be worried too much about keeping it clean, whatever. So this one is G10. It's black, and the liner is a carbon fiber based glow liner. So basically, if you drop that down in the grass at night time, you'll find it. You'll see it.
You have one of them, Roberts. That's
Yeah, I actually
okay.
I have that handle, and I can attest it. That's why we made contact with you, is because I got one of your knives as a present, and I really liked it.
Yeah.
But so back to this, that's the G10.
Yeah.
But then the wooden knives, you would believe that they would scratch easier.
Yeah. Well, traditionally I wouldn't have made. It's only in the last year, I suppose, that I've started to be happy that I can put out wooden handles, and the main reason being that, you know, any kind of a natural material, including leather, doesn't like getting wet, and it'll eventually kind of weather. So the wooden handles, probably anything that's porous. If you get blood, guts, bodily fluids into anything that's porous, it generally doesn't end well. So the process that I've kind of I won't develop, a lot of makers use it, but I'm at the stage where I'm happy that I can let it out into the wild, and it's a stabilization process, which is basically the air is taken out of the timber and replaced with resin, and the resin is baked, and it's plasticizing it. Basically, it comes hard. It's very, very hard and durable, and it'll last.
And we have the two different, I suppose, the two different, one before and one after.
Yeah. So basically, there's
a noticeable difference
in
the weight of the two of them.
So that's oak burl. Again, oak burl is kind of rare. So for all intents and purposes, basically burl is a kind of a wart that will grow on the side of a tree, and usually older trees, and you'll see this big kind of ugly lump on the side of a tree, and it's a burl. But basically, it's a cancer that's on the tree. It's not supposed to be there, but it's got a lovely character, lovely grain. There's a lot of work to get it to that stage. You'll see walnut burl and stuff like that, and you know, the old Jaguar cars, and it's a veneer. But again, it's the same principle.
So that's you put some sort of synthetic material in.
Yeah. So basically, that's submerged in a liquid. It comes in a liquid form. It's a two-tone. There's different types. There's cactus juice, and there's a other kind of stabilizing fluids that you can get. It's liquid. You put it into the pot. In those kind of blank sizes, you submerge them and weigh them down, and the air is sucked out. It's in a vacuum chamber. Air is sucked out, and you gotta stand basically while you're doing this, because you can actually see the bubbles come out. Bubbles are could be coming for the likes of that. It's very porous. Maybe 3 days you can see the bubbles coming out.
And we were talking about that probably differentiates you a little bit. You can do it. You can get away with 24 hours. I think we were saying. You were saying, but you like.
So the likes of that, the bog oak and the oak burl, I've left it in for 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Yeah. And again, that's to make sure that you've got full penetration of the. Even at that, you're not getting. You're getting it as much as you can.
You won't get 100% because of the very
nature
of it.
The stabilization won't work for big voids. So if you see there's big voids in that, but I have different ways of finishing that off. Then I'll use a different resin for smaller cracks once I get into it. So.
And how long? Like obviously, this timber that you get, it comes in large
basically
Slabs,
trees.
yeah.
So this oak I got from a chap over in Sligo. He actually bought the whole tree. Came from a place in Tipperary. As far as I know, it's a 10 or 12 foot diameter tree. So he cut it up into slabs. Usually would be going to make tables or whatever. So I bought a lot of that. I've got enough to do me for a long time.
So that, right, so how long is the process from when you get it till it's ready, just the handle, to go onto a knife?
It's very hard to.
The point I'm
measure.
trying to make is, people wonder how come these handmade knives are so expensive.
Yeah.
But my point is that the work that goes into them,
It's
and the time.
huge. It's
so
huge.
just the handle, how long roughly do you think?
Well, I suppose from the time I would have gotten this to get it to that stage to be usable, it's probably 3 months before I can use it. Just a piece of wood. So, but again, what I kind of have, I'm lucky enough now that I can stage things. So I can do a batch of claws, I can do a batch of pro stalkers, I can do a batch, and I might do 10 claws at a time, 10 pro stalkers at a time. So it's all done in batches. But like if you were to say how long does it take to make this to this, sure, you wouldn't be able to make one a week. Like you know, at the minute I can probably turn around 2, 3, maybe 4 pieces a week because of the various stages. But the one that I finished yesterday, I might have started it 3 months ago. But I'm only doing an hour here, an hour there, you know, the various stages. It's madness, there's no question, because...
I have a question, because you're after building up so much knowledge yourself. Are you passing it on?
Yeah, I'm hoping, like I have 3 boys and a girl, I'm hoping that one of the lads will take... So, of the 3 lads, one is big into design. Now he's luckily 7. He's mad into drawing, and he's like he'll draw a little knife there and look, Daddy, will you make this? And we'll make the bits and pieces for him. I'm hoping that they will. I'm hoping they will. But like I had to learn this from scratch. You have to have a certain element of fucking madness to want to do this as well. Do you know what I mean?
I fully get that.
Yeah.
I've that just in other areas.
Yeah.
But see the knowledge that took you so long to build up.
And again, I'm still not there.
100%. And that's
Yeah.
why I think you would be a good teacher.
Yeah.
Is you could refine the knowledge down, because
Yeah.
obviously you've made all your mistakes. Would you not run courses?
Well, I thought about it. There are people who do that at the minute, and I might just leave it to them for the moment.
Okay.
I suppose my problem is that I get tied up in the making. So I tend not to go to trade shows. I tend not to go to kind of days here and days there, because it's a day out of the workshop.
Okay.
So I've been invited to loads of stuff like Gifted and Crafted, all those kind of shows and stuff like that. But to me, I shouldn't be here. I'd be where I am is up to my elbows in muck and shit from grinding dust. Like I have to blow off fucking use an air hose to get before I can go into the house at night, you know, because I'm covered in shit, and grinding dust and dust in places that you've never seen. But it is a bit of madness. But
imagine you had your own little team that you're after teaching,
yeah,
and then that would free up time for you to come with us to the shot show next
yeah,
year.
Yeah. I know. It's kind of coming to the stage now to share it off the pot. To do this.
Yeah.
But taking that leap to being full time, it has another element, because then it's a business. It's a when your hobby or your labour of love becomes a business, and you're responsible for other people, it changes the dynamic a bit. That's the fear.
Without a doubt, look, we can attest with here with your hunting is the whole what would you say?
Sure.
The love of it is that you can go out and whatever you want, but then it becomes kind of we have to bring the camera and we have to bring microphones, and so there is a little bit of that. It does take a little bit.
That's the fear.
And the danger is then obviously, well, in our game we forget that the camera's there, so and sometimes people remind us of that very fact. But I think just even what you're describing there in terms of the timber and the work that goes on in the handle. We haven't even touched a lot of the blades yet, which we will do. Yeah. But how many different types of handle material? Now I know that's
Yeah, I suppose the combination is endless. So you can combine any number of the materials that you have there with every other material. So
Yeah.
you can combine, we'll say, the timber with the G10 liners or the coloured liners. So again, the point of difference that I try to do everything in-house. So some places will outsource it, they'll buy in maybe blocks of timber that's stabilised wood, which is fine, 100%, no issue with that. I just like the challenge of, why can't I do that?
Yeah.
Why can't I do that? And stabilised wood, why can't I do that?
And of course, you're all the time pushing the boundary then of
100%.
what you can do.
100%, and try something. Not everything works. Not everything
Yeah.
works. It's like the burl woods now. I'd be hesitant to put on a hunting knife because
Yeah.
would I be 100% sure that it won't.
This type of wood.
Yeah.
This.
Yeah. So again, I'm nearly there. That I'm confident to do it and stand over it. But
That wood here is what is that? It's like a spalting in that, is there?
yeah, that's a spalted blackthorn. Again, very very rare.
Beautiful
Unusual.
and really dense, isn't it?
Yeah, there's some weight in
Yeah.
that for anyone.
So again, the weight is from the stabilization process. That's probably it's probably double its weight from the stabilization process.
And then that one that you have in your hand, the only
Yeah.
reason I ask is because it's different than most others.
Yeah.
What type of...
So it's a new material. It's called Sure Grip or Sure Touch. It's different names, but it's basically layers of G10 with rubber. So it comes from America. It's expensive enough material, but it gives most of the hunting knives a bit more durability. That when it gets wet, it gets real grippy, sticky, so it has less likelihood to slip out of your hand. From this normal G10, it's not as grippy, but again, you'll find that the more experienced users will use them. So it's probably something that we're still developing with the...
That's a very good introduction to
Yeah.
like say
Sure.
for instance for a new stalker,
Yeah.
to because like that.
Yeah.
I know I've got nicks. I'm pretty sure you have too, and like that if you're new to it,
Yeah.
that's the biggest fear obviously. So anything that can reduce that.
Yeah.
And just as one little thing which I don't want to forget is you mentioned the name of this little kind of
Oh, the
grooving,
jimping on the back.
jimping.
Yeah.
and that
So it's
again
kind of
adds the-
thumb grips or whatever. Again, it's not on every knife, but it's on most of the knives. Would say that you need to grip the handle on it. So with the claw, again, it's designed differently for control.
Control,
you
yeah.
can use your fingers to, and that's the ergonomics, I suppose, that you use. A lot of guys will put their index finger over the top to stop it from
nicking
hitting
the
the intestines or stomach or something like that, But again, it's a practical bit of...
the possibilities I suppose are endless. We've seen here there's you can have a different thickness of different materials within the handle itself.
Yeah.
And you were saying as well, Paddy, that it goes, I suppose you put each knife in your hand and if you're not happy with the feel of it, which gives the knife both its individuality but also as Rob was saying, the ergonomics are they're what would you say, they're like a winemaker. You're testing all the time,
Yeah, and it's about feel, about look and feel, and again, a lot of the times I'd be like, there's something just not right there, and I'll keep tweaking until I'm happy. Now sometimes there's a fine line, you can fucking overdo it. The problem with most makers, and you'll find it, any kind of crafters or any kind of craftsmen or women, they're very... So a lot of the time I wouldn't be happy with a piece, so I just have to go, right, just fucking leave it. And anybody that I speak to, leather jewelers, they're no, I'm just not happy with that. No, I want to tweak it, and it's the same. I don't know what it is, but it's an affliction that we have, that we're never quite happy with the work that we do.
And will you come back to it and tweak it again, or is that it? Put to one
So
side.
there's comes a stage where you just got to say, no, I'm gonna leave it fucking today and come back to it tomorrow, because it'll annoy you, and your brain will fry. But sometimes then you just go, I would ask Dave an awful lot with the deer hunt, what's needed for this, or the little, I see that there's variances with again, I don't watch what the UK makers are doing or even the American makers, but somebody would say to me, I want a knife like such a maker in the UK. I said, well, why don't you just get it from them if that's what you want?
Yeah.
So, I just thought I'd talk to you. Well, no,
I make my own knives.
I make my own, and it's based on this because this, it's like usually David or whoever, any of the guys that would tell me what they need. So if I did what the hunters do in the field, I'd have a better idea, but I don't. So I'm really reliant on the guys that are in the field.
But isn't that brilliant from our perspective as the hunting community, that you are listening to feedback and you're changing products to help us?
Yeah.
Like I'm looking at some of the stuff on the table. Most of it is stainless steel.
Yeah.
There's a couple of high carbon pieces.
There's a couple of high carbons, yeah.
And which would you recommend for the hunting community?
Well, again, from complete practicality, stainless.
Only in your opinion now.
100%.
Yeah.
So each their own.
Yeah.
Everybody has a preference. Everybody has a what they like. There's nothing wrong with carbon steel.
Yeah.
The only issue that I have with carbon steel is the maintenance element of it. Unless you are prepared to clean your knife, keep your knife clean, dry, put it away into the sheath after you're finished with it.
And your sheath probably has to be dry.
100%.
Yeah.
You got to do that. If you're not prepared to do that, you're going to come back tomorrow and your knife is going to be in ribbons. Not there's anything. It has no effect on the performance, but it's going to be nasty.
Yeah, but it can have, from our perspective again, contamination onto
100%. Yeah.
Which
is poor. Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, all the butchers years ago, you know, the old butcher shop would have a big fucking knife stuck on a board that was black. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just a patina that's built up on the knife, like this one here. This is a forced patina. So basically, it's through the process of I'll acid etch that. I'll use ferrochloric acid or I'll use hydrochloric acid, depending on the type. It turns shiny steel to that almost instantly, and then you clean it off. I'll stone tumble it. I will stone tumbler, or I'll polish it, or whatever. So that's kind of it's patina, but it's polished. Do you see the kind of black shine in it?
Yeah.
Pretty much the same as a gun barrel. It's the same process.
And there's also then you have some nice kind of
that's a forged blade, I suppose you could say. So it's kind of that's heated in a gas and it's hammered to get that kind of texturing on it.
And that's a really cool for anyone that can't see it. Again, the Ergonomics that knife is really nice. That's what type of timber is that?
That's oak. That's oak. Irish white oak. It's stabilised as well. It's what you'd call a vintage oak, because it's a reclaimed piece of timber. Okay. It was actually, that was a gate post, believe it or not. Yeah.
Isn't that brilliant? Like,
so where I got it from, the guy thought it was bog oak because it was so heavy.
Okay.
And it was in a gate post. He remembered it when he was a kid. It was changed into a steel post and was just buried in a fucking ditch. Took it out. It was 12 foot long. So I think that's bog oak there, Paddy. You might do something with that. So we cut it up into like 3 foot lengths, and I was like, it's oak, but about it was maybe 6 inches in diameter, but all of the outside was ruined, like it was gone. So but what I got down to the inside was this, and it's old Irish timber. You see how dense it is?
It's unbelievable. Yeah.
So it's very dense.
And is it possible then? Like that's just a question off the cuff. Like, say for instance, if there was a piece of timber that came out of, for argument's sake, somebody's home house, or could you?
Oh, I love it. Yeah, love it.
Street,
I love that story because I have bog oak. I don't have much of it left, but the original batch of bog oak that I had came from a thatched cottage outside of Clonfad and between on the Mayo Roscommon border. I got a phone call from a friend of mine who's a sculptor. He says, Paddy, there's a lady there that has bog oak. It's not good to me, I can't do anything with it, but you might look at it. I was saying, rafters, Jesus Christ, rafters. But what they were was actually trees. So the old 150-year-old thatched cottages there was no beams.
Yeah.
There were trees that were dug out of the bog, put together with dowels and hessian sacks bolted together. And some of the oak still had the hessian dowels, and there were all maybe pine dowels in it. The pine was rotted away, but the oak was still there. And the story. So that was, for me, to get that usable. Now there was 100 years worth of tar and soot and shit from the smoke. You could actually smell the turf fire from the oak.
Brilliant.
So again, most of the Irish timbers, I like to get a bit of a story. I have some stuff there that came from Killeen Castle. I have holly, that was a tree. Now holly wood is kind of rare, because you don't see holly trees. You usually see holly bushes. But this was like, it had fallen halfway into a drain, and there was a tree surgeon that came across. He said, holly wood, Paddy, I don't know if it's any good to you, but it was absolutely lovely. Lovely character timber. I don't think I have any with me now, but something that has a bit of story.
Yeah.
So I have guys that would, tree surgeons in particular, that would come across unique or unusual timber. Like this applewood. Applewood burl is very rare.
And that is beautiful.
It's a lovely character. It's a lovely grain to it.
There's a lovely grain and fiddleback in that.
Mm.
And then just looking at that,
yeah,
there's different types of I suppose, how would you
finishes.
say,
Yeah.
like how you get it sharp?
Yeah.
I know that's a real simple way of putting it, but is there different types of grinds or?
Yeah. So the main ones, I suppose, is there's a full flat grind. The Pro Stocker would have a full flat grind, which is you'll grind right up to a couple of mil below the spine. Are there benefits for that? Again, it's just really preference. I suppose a lot of the newer hunting blades have a Scandi grind. You know, again, that's not a traditional Scandi grind there. It's kind of a high 10-15 mil grind. Whereas the Scandi grind is traditionally zero. It's ground to zero, which is no secondary bevel on it.
Okay, yeah.
So if you know them, you know the Mora knives, the ones that you the cheaper ones.
Yeah.
They have a Scandi grind, but it's ground to zero. That's why they're nearly impossible to sharpen.
Okay.
They have a zero grind, so there's no secondary bevel on it.
So I suppose for people that don't, so on that one, I'll just show that in the video. So that one essentially is basically ground from the back of the blade
right to the tip of the spine. Yeah.
In comparison with, you say this one here, which as you say is probably 10-15 mil
10 mil.
of a kind of like a bevel.
Yeah.
Halfway up the blade. So for ease of sharpening, then would I be right in saying this is slightly easier to sharpen, or not?
For me, the flat grind is easier to sharpen.
Okay.
But again, for me, it's kind of, I'm just so used to doing it. It makes no odds. But again, if you're in the field, if you're familiar with using a steel or a strop, either or will be fine.
Suffice.
Yeah. So
and then we have, I suppose, you have all different variations of that. So again, what leans you towards, like, is it personal request, or does like, for instance, do you have, so will this knife traditionally come with all of that, or can you do a flat grind on that one as well?
I suppose you're limited probably by the thickness of the spine, so you don't have an awful lot of meat to work with there. So if you did a flat grind here, it'll, you know, your tip, by the time you get to the tip there,
you've
is
very
narrowed,
little
very little material. So again, it works well. Scandi-ish kind of grind works well on that. It's not a full Scandi, but it's close enough to it, and it gives you a little bit of meat to play with on the end. So like, I've seen guys take heads, feet, everything with that, because at the tip it gives you have that meat, so you still have your 3 mil at the tip. It goes to a point at the tip, so you have that flexibility that you still have the bit of meat on the spine, that if you need to
get around it,
get a bit of leverage and a bit of kind of, you know, you can do.
Paddy, I can attest to that. Now, I've broken down many of them with
Okay.
that knife,
Okay.
and it holds its edge, doesn't it?
it does.
Maybe after, I don't know, maybe 6-7 red there,
Right.
breaking down,
Wow.
I might give it a strop, just a leather strop,
Okay.
and it brings it back.
Very good.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I can attest to that.
It's field tested here,
Yeah.
and you just mentioned this is kind of probably getting there, the blue one here.
Yeah.
These in particular, you said they generally go to.
Yeah, I find they go to America. They're a general purpose, an EDC, an everyday carry kind of knife.
Okay.
For, you know, it's small enough. It's not quite a weapon. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I get asked a lot, do you need a license for weapons? I said, well, I'm sure if I made weapons, I would, but these are tools for specific uses. So again, it's a small little, it's a utility knife. It's kind of handy for your pockets. Handy, it'll do everything. It'll open boxes. It'll open. But my findings are that these will go to America, Canada. You know.
That's, to me, that's like a almost like my grandfather, I think, had something similar, like a little kind of a field knife for a farmer. You know what I'm saying? That
you probably had one of them.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, exactly. But it kind of has that kind of a feel about it, doesn't it? That it's a multi-purpose knife.
Now we're going to develop that in stainless, so it'll be a bit more versatile. And to be fair, the blade is probably suitable for doing small game. You know.
Yeah.
We're going to do something for a trout and small bird knife as well. I get a lot of questions on people. Give me something that'll do small bird.
Brilliant.
Yeah, and maybe a trout. So small bird and trout. There again, that's contentious. People have different views on what that is. But again, something a bit smaller.
And then
we're working on that.
I suppose, how do you get one of these from the start to the finish? Is there a process that you could talk us through really quickly?
Yeah, sure. So basically, I buy the sheets of steel flats. So you can buy them as big or as small. So usually they're in meter or 600 mil lengths, as thick or as thin as you want, down to 1.2. I think is the smallest or the thinnest steel you can get. that's probably 2.4, I would say, for example. So what I have here is a blank before I would do anything with it. So again, I have the 3 stages of, we'll say, a claw, or sorry, a pro stocker.
What type of steel is that?
That's a 14C28N.
Okay, yeah.
So again, most of the it's a Scanvic. A lot of, so what I'm using at the moment is either ABL or 14C28 for the hunting knives. And again, it works. There's no need to, I experiment with different steels all the time. I've got just Elmax there on the table. There's B-Cut from the UK. There's a few different other types. There's 440B, which is a variant of 440C. Again, ABL is just, the feedback is strong. 14C is quite strong as well. So I kind of stick to what works. Once the feedback is strong, I'm getting consistent results. That's what I stick with. I used to use N690. It was a brilliant steel, but it just, for some reason, it dropped off the radar. I can't get it. I can get it in 4, too thick for what I needed to do. Grand for bushcraft knives and stuff like that, but not for this.
So that's, we now have our blank
Your
piece
blank, yeah.
in around what, an inch and a quarter, take roughly, or wide by what, it's about 9 inches, is it?
Yeah, thereabouts, yeah.
Thereabouts.
8.5 inches, yeah.
So, and the next part in the process, the next step, how do we go from?
So I use
here to there?
templates. So any of the pieces that I use for production, I have a template that I would basically, I use a marking fluid on the steel. I'll put it out and I'll sketch around the piece of steel that I'm using and cut it out. So we cut it by hand. Grinders. I don't have a bandsaw to do it, so I cut it out with a grinder, and I use the belt grinder to finish it off in profile. So you go from that to that, which is your outline of the knife.
So that we can start to see.
You can see a process. Yeah.
The first part in our first step in the process.
Yeah. So the shape, and then you've got the drill the holes.
You do your
little jimping on the front. And the reason for that is because you can't do that after it's heat treated.
Okay.
So you can't. You wouldn't be able to drill the steel after it's heat treated.
And why is that? It fractures, or
Well,
it's too hard?
basically the steel is harder than the drill bit that's trying to drill it.
Yeah.
And it's a lot harder.
Yeah.
So, like, I have a Rockwell tester that'll give me within 1 or 2 degrees of how hard the steel is before and after. So, once you basically heat treat that, you're going to do nothing as regards drilling or filing with it. Your grinder will do the work. It's harder on belts once it's heat treated, but it just gives me that little bit of flexibility, I suppose you could say.
And just because we have the blank in our hand, that what's that called? The end portion. That's the full
the
steel.
tang. Yeah.
So all your knives are full tang.
Full tang. Yeah.
And what's the benefit of a full tang knife?
So I suppose it gives you its rigidity. Again, there's nothing wrong with a hidden tang blade or rat tail tangs as they go. I just prefer the full tang. You've got a lot more stability. You've got a full piece of steel from tip to the end of the knife or the heel of the knife. That for me, nothing wrong with hidden tangs or rat tail. It's just what I prefer. You have strength. You're not going to snap it too hard, too easily. Anyway, you will snap it if you put the force on it, but not as easy.
We were always taught full tang was the only way to go. That's the only reason I asked.
Yeah. Again, preference. I prefer full tang. You've got full strength, and also if you break the handle off, you can just repair the handle. So, which I've not seen any handles being broken, but I'm sure there's somebody that could
somewhere. Somebody will just will do that.
Yeah. But
So next part in the process, we have your drilling done, your basic profile, your jinking. Next, how do we?
So it's heat treated then. So once I've the holes are drilled, the little bit of jimping is done on it, and any marking that I need to do is done. So it's heat treated. So this has to be treated at 1060 degrees or 1030 degrees, depending on the type. So each steel comes with I suppose a data sheet for what it likes, what it doesn't like, how to anneal it, how to harden it, how to temper it. So you just go by that. Which for any knife maker, it's a follow the instructions. So within reason, you can't go too far wrong, so long as you have the tools to do it. So this will say would need to be 1060 or 1030 depending on, I think it's the 14C likes 1030 for 6-7 minutes. So I put it in and leave it soaking for maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes depending on what the manufacturer recommends. Take it out and it's quenched. Now 1060 degrees is hot. It's fucking damn hot. Now it'll take my furnace, my electric furnace or electric kiln to do this. It'll take about 4 hours to get up to that temperature. So I plate quench this. Stainless steel. You can oil quench it, but I prefer the plate quench.
And what is?
So plate quenching is basically you will take it from the furnace and it goes between two plates of aluminium under pressure, and you force in compressed air. Now, before actually, I missed a step. Before this goes into the kiln, I put an inhibitor on it, which means that when you put this into the furnace, because of the heat, and if there's oxygen within the furnace, it sucks all the carbon out of the steel. So it can have a huge effect on how hard your steel is. So I put an inhibitor. Some guys use foil, stainless steel foil. I put it's a painted on inhibitor. So it's basically a heat resistant paint that stops the heat treat process from sucking the carbon from the steel out, and you'll have what's called decarb or decarburization. You'll actually see it. You'll see
it on the paint.
Bubbles.
Bubble.
You'll see bubble. But the inhibitor stops that. It doesn't stop at 100%, but it goes a long way. I've had no issues. Now you can go with the stainless foil, but it's very expensive and it adds on extra cost to the process.
And does it add on much more percentage wise?
It does. Again, I haven't used it.
Okay.
But also it's very hard to get the knife out of the steel.
After the process.
Yeah. But you can do it. Again, a lot of guys do different things. I find the inhibitor works quite well for me. There are other guys that wouldn't use the inhibitor, they'd use the foil. I find it works quite well, and I've had no issues, and I've had very little decarb. And I suppose the Rockwell tester gives you the idea of whether you have it right or not, which is good enough for me. And again, if there was something wrong, you know very quick, because you'd have pieces coming back and you'd have issues. So. And
then that cooling process then.
Yeah.
You're saying two aluminium.
Yeah. So it goes under 2 sheets of aluminium, which I chill down first. So it's got to go from 1060 degrees to room temperature in about less than 3 minutes. So the quicker you get that done, so it's compressed air. It's a quick process. You're under pressure to do it, so you got to get it done really quick. But once you have your area set up and you've got the press right and you've got the aluminium sheets right, it works quite well. And then once you get it's not viable to do it one at a time. You got to do them in batches.
There's obviously you're getting a temperature of 1030 or 1060.
Yeah.
It takes a bit of
Does
energy and electricity and all that to get things up to that. So your costs per unit are this is not a mass produced product by any means. So if you can do a couple at a time, I'm sure it leaves.
And some of them are hotter. Some of them need to be 1160, and so. Yeah, it
takes a bit of juice to run it.
Yeah.
I'd say you're flavoured a month at Christmas time there.
To be fair, yeah, the DSB bills do get a little bit
saucy,
hotter at the latter part of the year. So, and again, it usually coincides with the seasons kicking in.
Yeah.
So the deer season. So what I'm trying to do now is get an anticipation for September.
Yeah.
But it doesn't always work that way, because what happens is, and for me it's very hard to get a balance, because I'll get a rush on chef's knives and then a lull maybe on deer knives, and it's hard to make sure that I have a bit of stock.
Yeah.
So, but last year before Christmas it was all chef's knives.
And then all of a sudden, then as you say, hunting season kicks in and everyone decides or figures out they've lost their knife or want a new knife. And
usually, and again, no disrespect, it's the wives and the girlfriends on December it starts.
I
don't know what he needs, but you might know.
And then I suppose, out of everything on the table, what are your top sellers for anyone that is looking to purchase for a significant other or themselves?
I suppose at the minute it's the Claw.
Okay.
And then second, it's the Pro Stalker, which is that green leather. Or sorry, that's the hybrid. The Pro Stalker is then this lad, and then you've got the hybrid. Now the hybrid isn't as, I suppose, it's probably the third best of the deer knives. But again, it will do everything the claw does. It'll do everything the Pro Stalker does. But it just, I don't know, the other two just seem to have the little bit of.
And I wouldn't mind the two that I kept going to.
Yeah.
Was this one and this one.
Yeah.
In my hand, and the ergonomics of both.
So
For
again,
some reason,
that's the point I was making earlier. It's preference. So they'll all do the same thing within reason. But what's your preference, or what's your?
We were talking off air, and you were saying it's actually very hard to replicate the exact same thing. Again and again.
Anything that's handmade, like it's.
100%.
If I was getting these water jetted, which is something that I might look at down the road, I can send a sheet of steel to a water jetter, and he can cut out blanks.
Perfect every
time. So that gives a little bit more consistency. But you know, you're only talking within millimeters.
Yeah, but so I suppose, do you ever go get a haircut and you're looking in the mirror going, now that's perfect, but he keeps going, and you go, man, that would have been grand if you left me alone 5 minutes ago.
No, we're Irish, we never say that.
Well, I never say it, but I think it in my head. I smile, he puts the mirror up behind my head and I say, oh no, that's grand, perfect, thanks a minute. But do you ever get that stage when you're doing the handles on a knife, you go, just a little bit more?
Yeah, it happens all the time, so a little bit. Again, so I kind of stop once it feels right in the hand. And with the Pro Stalker, there's not much you can't. So I have a system that each piece is very close to being the same, and it's just the hand finishing. So with the composite materials, you won't find any flaws, you won't find any issues with the material, because it's always pretty consistent. With the wood, it's a little bit different, because for all the best intentions in the world, you might find a little bit of a hairline void or a crack that didn't come through the process. Now, not a crack as such, but a void. You can process that, you can fill that, you can raise it, fixing that.
But again, you're dealing with a natural product, so you're going to expect that little bit of. I think that, like we were just saying as well, that adds a little bit to the story of the knife, the character of the knife.
Just a bit of character,
Yeah, and I think these are pieces that, I've said it before, like if there is women or wives and stuff, these are, because what lad doesn't need or want, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You go everywhere with them, and these are going to be, please God, around a long time after we're gone, and there's a story.
They're built to last.
Yeah,
and they're built for work.
And there's going to be a story after. Like their story's only beginning when you're finished with your process. And then I suppose we've moved on now to our next stage in the
grinding.
The process. We're starting to get sharp here.
Yeah. So again, the grinding is, I suppose, that's the fun part of it, really. Like, so these are all hand ground. I don't use a template for these or a jig for these. So you're really going by feel. And after it's heat treated, you got to keep it cool once you're grinding. So I'll start off with, usually with this, depending on how thick it is, I'll start with maybe a 60 grit belt and work my way up to 120, 240 and 400 until I get to that stage, and then I'm hand finishing from there to get that satin. So when you're grinding, you see the marks, see the grind marks on that blade, for example. You'll see the grind marks.
Yeah.
You'll have the same on this one, but I find that with the hunting knives, I like a kind of a satin finish.
Yeah, not as much as I can see it on this one. Yeah,
exactly. Now this is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I just find that this works a lot better. Now the only way you can get that is by hand. So you put it into a vise, and I'm using different grits of stones to get that. I get rid of all the marks, all the scratch marks. So I've got parallel lines running from the back of the blade to the front of the blade.
Tip where this is running down the waist.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So you'll see the grind marks. Again, it's just for me, it's just a preference, and it gives it a nice satin finish. So that's probably hand sanded up to 600 grit paper.
Wow. And
stones, and it's just purely by hand.
Yeah, that's, and I suppose that's where your craft really comes into it. You're dictating when
it's ready.
Exactly.
Yeah, and
I like that.
So it's textured. It's a hammered texture. That's forged, basically, you could say. Again, completely different use. That's a bushcraft blade.
And the back.
Hand filing on the spine. Now, the good thing about this is you can, I could put a gold inlay on the back of that if you wanted. So you can dick it up or jazz it up to make it really.
And again, that's all before it's heat treated.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, you couldn't. You wouldn't
touch that.
So that there is probably 62 Rockwell, which some of the files that I have are only 56, 57 Rockwell. You know.
I suppose I've one question. Before you let them out of the shop and you've sharpened them, do you have a machine that tests the sharpness, or are you just going off, I don't know, cutting paper, cutting hair, before they go out?
Not so much, but you will know. I cut hair. I cut pieces of hair. I'll cut pieces of paper. I'll cut pieces of cardboard, and strop it. So I suppose the sharpening is contentious for everybody, because everybody has their own idea of how to sharpen, and the grits and the stones, and some people are saying, it needs to be 3,000 microns before. No. Keep it simple. So my process, and I've done this from the start. I use a Lansky sharpening system. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
Yeah.
Again, it's probably the most simplest form of sharpening that there is. So it's very primitive actually when I think of it, but it works. So everything, and again, when it goes out into the field, it's repeatable. So I can say, buy yourself a Lansky system, 25 degrees, up as far as 600 grit stone, you're good to go. Strap it, away with you.
That's exactly. So anyone who gets one of these knives, and I can recommend them, is you get a box with your knife in it and a little handwritten note from Paddy, and it actually says 25 degrees on it, and that's what we've been going off with our sharpening system.
And again, it works. So some go, no, it has to be 17 degrees. Okay, I don't disagree with you, but it works for me. So again, the thing about, I tend not to get into arguments with people about sharpening and knives and stuff, because
like us with calipers, Paddy, we could argue all day with ourselves.
But there's no right or wrong way. This works for me, and I can repeat the process, and I know that you can repeat it as well, so long as you know what to do with it. I've been using the same. I've maybe gone through 4 different kits of Lanskys from the start, but when it leaves my workshop, any of the hunting knives are going out at 25 degrees. I know it's sharp, and I know that you can repeat the process in the field. If you know how to use a steel, I would say to anybody that has any kind of knife, kitchen knife, learn how to use a steel. I can use a steel with my eyes closed because I've just been doing it for so long. I can sharpen a blade on the slack belt on my grinder. I just do it. I don't know how I do it, but I do it instinctively. I couldn't show you how to do it, but I just know that it's, and I'm looking for that little bit of a burr, a little bit of a burr, and the same on the other side. Then I'll finish it on the stone or strap it.
And the strap, is that to take off the burr?
Yeah, it just takes the burr. So I use double-sided paddles. Again, it's the last step before it goes into the box, before it leaves the workshop. And I have a strap that's 12 years old, I think, and I'm still using it, and it works 100%. So a couple of straps, and it's double-sided. One side is the thick leather, and the other side is the soft leather. So it just gives that little bit of refinement.
And then I suppose for anyone who doesn't know, including me and Anto, what's the benefit of taking off that burr compared to leaving it on? So
you still need, if you can imagine, you've got a point, and on one side of your point might be a little bit that way, to the left, or a little bit to the right. So what you want is to take away that burr to give it a clean edge. Now you still need a bit of a tooth, so that's what cuts. So some people say you need a 3,000 grit Waterstone. That's, to me, it's too fine. And if you have too fine of a point, it's going to wear. So if you look at a razor blade, your Mach 3 razor blade, the best a man can get, Gillette, whatever the fuck they say. How many shaves would you get from a shave?
Not a whole lot. No.
Would you get 3?
I would, because I don't have a whole lot of facial hair.
I'm in double digits there, Paddy.
I find what I do is I maybe might leave it for a few days, and I get that really wiry and the blades don't last. It's no different from this. Hair, cartilage is probably the hardest thing on the blade, particularly hair. I find that guys that are doing raids hair is, it's very, 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 very hard stuff on a blade. It'll take the edge fairly quick, but again, it shouldn't be too hard to re-establish that.
But see, some of the lads that hunt don't understand. If you pierce in and cut out, from skin side out through the hair, it's not as bad as trying to cut through the hair.
For those guys is to buy a lightsaber.
I've seen people trying to cut through from the outside, just slashing away at hair. And I know you're sweating there thinking about your knives, but see the burr. I presume if it's slightly more on one side, that it's easier to fold that burr and then dull your knife.
Yeah.
So you could take the burr off and
So
then
the strop will generally get rid of that
Yeah.
little burr for you. It won't get rid of it, but it'll make it less obvious, I suppose. But you still need a tooth.
yeah.
So it's the tooth that cuts. So if you look at a blade on a microscopic level, I suppose, you think that your blade is smooth as hell. It's not. It's got teeth.
Serrated side
It's
thing.
little tiny micro serrations on the blade. So in my opinion, 600 grit stone is as much as you need to go. Again, that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
I can go up
Well,
to.
it makes sense because, as you say, like especially for what we're talking about
Yeah.
here, which is essentially fieldcraft knives, and that's like we are going to be cutting at
Yeah.
some point a little bit of hair, as you say, a
Yeah.
little bit of cartilage. So if you go too fine, you are going to, I presume, get a dull, which again we don't want to be sharpening knives. I know I don't anyway.
Sure.
Too regular. So you want to try and keep.
I actually like sharpening the knives.
Yeah.
It's sort of
Well, it's a bit of maintenance as well. So
Yeah.
if you have a strop. Now I've got a couple of small kind of pocket straps as well that I give from time to time. Just take it up, give it a
Yeah.
lash. You see guys using diamond steels and diamond stones, they're fine. If you have a small steel in the field, happy days. But steels aren't easy to use if you don't know how to use them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So with this one now, any of the chef's knives, I've never used a stone on a chef's knife. Never.
yeah.
Just give it a steel.
So I suppose we've just been talking about, and I hope for anyone who's listening, if you can't see us, this is our first time trying to use
This machine over here.
a camera. Right, but we're a little bit nervous that the camera's not picking up
Yeah.
the sound, so we're also using mics.
Yeah.
But for anyone who can see us, that is Paddy's chef knife, and when I say that thing is balanced, that feels, I know nothing about chef's knives.
Balance on a knife edge. That exactly. It's just
It has to feel right in your hand.
that feels like an extension of somebody's finger, doesn't it? It's just unbelievably well balanced. I suppose that's you've taken your knowledge and put it into this type of a machine, which is.
But that's where I'm at my most confident, I suppose,
Yeah.
because the rest is kind of reliant and it's developed with, what you needed to do. Now I certainly don't know everything, but again I've used like 2 or 3 of these in the house, that I find it hard to mind because what happens is somebody will come and fuck it into the dishwasher. That's probably the biggest problem with chef's knives is you have to, when I'm putting them out in the box, I give there's a 2-page care note on it, and people go, oh jeez, I have to fucking mind this. But what I would say to anybody is, don't put anything in the dishwasher that you care about.
Yeah.
If you have a good set of crystal glasses, don't put them in the dishwasher.
Yeah.
And
that's like, to put that into the dishwasher would be
anything that you care about,
sacrilege.
don't put in the
Yeah.
dishwasher, because there's abrasives in the dishwasher. It's going to eat it away.
You see it on
and detergents and
glasses.
whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
of course, yeah.
Laura, I need one of these for Christmas.
Yeah, I tell you, I can attest it there. It's a fantastic. This is like a man's dream here. I think you've some of the materials we're just going to talk through us there, Paddy, just before we.
So there's a few bits of composites here. So this is the G10. So this is your standard G10. G10 is it's an American made. This particular one, it's made probably everywhere else in the world, but it's layers of fiberglass or glass fibers and set in a resin. So you'll feel how dense it is. It's impervious. It's pretty much indestructible, but it's very versatile, very durable. It's easy to work. Well, it's not easy to work with.
It kind of feels like a piece of, now a little bit lighter, obviously, but natural stone or something, polished and that kind of a
Actually,
or glass or something like that.
sounds like
Well, basically it is glass. It's glass fibers set in a resin, but you'll see how it polishes and it finishes very well. Very well.
Yeah.
And it'll last forever if you can mind it. So that's a variant of the G10. Again, it's the Shore Grip, what we showed you there earlier.
Very
It's
good.
the layers of rubber. So
yeah, you can see
so
that.
people are surprised when they see it in its raw format. Jesus, is that finished? That's it finished, yeah.
That's cool. It's like it's almost like a piece of wood on the side. It's like you can see the layers.
Yeah.
Kind of built up like a biscuit, and then I suppose attaching these to that. Then the last part of the process.
So again, I should have brought a piece that had its handles just put on. So it's 2-part epoxy. There's again, I've maybe tried 5 or 6 different types of epoxies to get to the one where I'm happy with it. It's the West Systems epoxy that I use, which is, you know, anything that you'll find the marine industry use is quite good. So this stuff, it's very expensive, but it's 2-part epoxy. Once it goes on, it's not coming off.
Okay.
Trust me, it's not coming off. So very good. I've tried lots of different epoxies, but I'm sticking with the one now that I've kind of found that works. Once it sets, that's it. I even find now that if I get a piece or if I get a drop of that stuff on the blade before it sets, I find it difficult to come off. So that's why you pay a lot of attention when you're putting your resin on, that you cover up the blade, cover them all up. But again, it works really well. So once the handles are on, that's another stage, because you've got to finish it off, grind it, bring it down to the shape of the knife then.
And then you have to put the pins through, is that the...
Oh, the pins go on. So basically you've got this, you'll drill out. Again, there's different guys have different methods of doing it. So for me to get the handles on, I will put it into the vise, bring it over to the pillar drill, I'll drill out my holes
Okay.
then glue it on, test it out to see that everything fits and it works well. So and then you put your epoxies on, and
you have a cool little, see on this one here.
Oh yeah, the mosaics, yeah.
Little mosaics in the, it's kind of hard.
So that's our own logo. We kind of I outsourced that, to be fair. So there's a chap that makes them for me. So he uses an EDM machine, which is it's a CNC machine that he can basically do any shape for you, and that's cut from a solid piece, 7 or 8 inches thick, and he puts it into the tube and sets it in resin. Most of the pins, they're mosaic pins I make myself.
Yeah, here's an example.
So that's just a tube with various different types of wires and copper and brass and everything through. Yeah,
it is really cool.
So it's a little bit of a point of difference.
We'll get a couple of close-ups of them just before we.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, so you've now attached it. But as you said, you have to start
shaping and grinding then from there. So you can get the rough shape of it out, but the rest then all the profiling is done by hand.
And what's your favourite part of the process? Like, and counter that.
Yeah.
What's your least favourite?
If I'm honest with you, I suppose the least favourite is the hand grinding, or the pieces that I do that in a batch. If I'm making 10 of them at a time, like, oh fuck's sake, I'm just getting bored. So that's why you'll find that knife makers tend not to do big batches of stuff, because they get bored. So I'm thinking, I want the next one, or I'm on to the next one, and I'm making stuff that maybe hasn't been tested yet, or so for me the fun goes out of it when you're making big batches. Or if I get an order for 10 pieces, I'm like, oh, Jesus.
You'll probably switch between doing a little bit of grinding and then going to do a bit of handle work.
So I'll have 10 different steps going at any one stage.
Yeah.
So I might have, like, today I glued up 5 handles, like 5 handles on the bench, and I've got 5 Kydex sheets to do tomorrow. I have maybe 10 or 12 leather sheets that needs to be stitched. Again, it's all stages.
Yeah.
So
you can kind of dip in and out of it. So I suppose this is an art form. So like this is.
Well, I don't know.
Without 100%, because you take now, if you put someone like, you couldn't teach me to do this, because I would get pissed off and end up with, you know what I mean.
Well, one of the big things about knife making is you better be prepared to be disappointed more than you're happy with.
You're happy,
yeah.
In that, and that's the sign of an artist, I think. It's never always trying to perfect, always trying to. Yeah,
and for me, it's developing the next process. Like 2.5 years ago, I didn't know how to do anything with Kydex. I was afraid of it, to be honest with you, because you're taking a piece of flat plastic from a sheet like this to that.
Fucking hell.
So that comes in like as big or as small a sheets as you want. So it's usually a foot square, 30 centimeters by 30.
Isn't it mad how that?
Yeah.
So how does that go to that?
So this basically, each knife is unique to that sheet. So basically, if I made 10 Pro Stalkers, each sheet is unique to that knife. I don't have the micron consistency that each of those are going to be identical. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because the hand finish is going to be slightly a little bit different. So each sheet is unique to that particular knife. So a lot of guys will say that bought a Pro Stocker 5 years ago are saying, can you make me a Kydex sheet for that and send it over to me? It doesn't work like that. I have to get the knife back. I got to get it back.
Yeah.
Now it's causing hassle in the UK because of fucking Brexit and stuff like that with customs and all that shit. But
and of course, over time, the knife has been sharpened and used and
100%. So like, for example, I got a Pro Stocker back before Christmas for a service, which was from, it's probably more than 10 years ago now. I could see how much it had worn down over that, maybe a couple of mil from sharpening. But we were still able to service it and get it back to being good again.
And I suppose, which country, like you have to mention the UK there a good bit, are they big?
There's a lot of stuff that was going to the UK before Brexit. Brexit has put a bit of a kibosh on it because of the customs. So customs are getting their claws in and they're charging customs. Now again, it's a process for me at the minute that I got to get that right, that I got to set it up that through a website it'll calculate the customs charges and whatnot. But again, hasn't been consistent. Some are getting through no problem. Now it's all going, I have to fill out a customs declaration form and I've registered as an exporter and it's all above board, but some will get caught up in the customs process.
And then in terms of your supply chain for all the materials, Brexit
was a disaster.
Was it?
Absolutely, yeah. Now again, it's kind of settling down a little bit now, but I've had to outsource. I'm going to Germany, I'm going to Finland, Switzerland, Slovenia even I've gotten some materials through from. Anything within the EU, it's, you know, it works out quite well. But some of the better suppliers are still in the UK, I have to say.
And outside of the Irish market, what is your biggest market?
Probably the UK at the minute. There's a few bits going to America, not so much of the hunting stuff because they don't see these as hunting knives. You know, there's a lot of good guys, and I've got a lot of friends that are in America, but they wouldn't classify, we'll say, the claw as a hunting knife.
Well, I can understand. Not that I can understand that, but say the likes of an elk.
Yeah.
Like you'd want to be penetrating in.
Yeah,
and I've actually never seen an elk myself up close, but I can only imagine the size and scale.
Yeah,
they mightn't believe.
They do like thicker blades. They like a lot of them 4 and 5 and 6 mil even on stainless. Yeah, stainless 440s. But
it's just like a sword, isn't it? Huh?
It's
what
heavy.
Is that?
That's 5 mil.
Thicker than that.
Yeah.
You wouldn't think that.
No, it's either 4.7 or 5. But
that's robust, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Like that's.
Yeah.
Do you know, like anything thicker than that now?
Yeah.
Will be nearly as
too
thick
much.
as myself, you know.
That's I special order for a customer. He wants a 6 mil stainless. It's a fantasy knife he wants, but that's just, I won't go any bigger than that. Because the process of grinding that, like it takes a lot of gear to actually grind a 5 or 6 mil piece, which have a lot more material to take away. You know.
Without a doubt.
So, but again, you know, it's still something that's in growth, because a lot of people, like my neighbours, wouldn't know what I'm doing. They don't know. Well, they hear it in the village maybe. That flat's making knives. Again,
he's a bit weird.
He's an
Aster's making a few knives.
We know that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jesus, he's the dangerous lad.
I think this is like fantastic. I think we're talking about the death of tanneries and stuff around the country.
Yeah.
This is like the rebirth of one of the old crafts, essentially. You know, like this is, you know, your blacksmiths and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And this is kind of like obviously a more refined form of that, but I think it's fantastic. And long may it continue. And I suppose for anyone who wants to contact you, Paddy, what's the best way to get to you?
Through the website or we're on all the platforms on social media. So we've a bit of TikTok. I don't do videos myself for TikTok, but I kind of just have the products with kind of a what would you call it,
a
reel kind of video. Yeah,
you're better off.
I like to stay behind
you on videos and stuff. Catch you off guard and that type of stuff.
Yeah, gotcha. No, I like to stay. As I said, I'm behind the scenes. I'm happier to do what I'm doing, and I don't do too many videos of myself, I suppose.
Yeah.
You know. So, but
we can look at it's you're probably too busy with this end of the real, the business end of it. So Smyth Knives, Instagram, you can get you on Facebook.
Yeah.
Website,
smithknives.com,
.com.
SMYTH, knives.com, and yeah.
Just I suppose and I know that, like, we have, as people can see here, there's 20 knives on the table. Give us a kind of a ballpark. What's your say from a deer stalking perspective or a hunting knife, in around? What would you be looking
So
to pay?
like, you're talking. We'll say the claw it's $239 at the moment, and I'm kind of pushed to produce it at that price at the minute because of I haven't had a price increase in 2 years, I'd say, but all my material costs have gone up. And that's the only reason I can do that is because I'm not full time at it.
Yeah.
So if I do go full time at it, I'll struggle to maintain those prices unless I'm getting volume through.
Yeah.
And there's only a certain amount you can produce anyway. But I suppose we're developing. I'm trying to cater for every price range.
Yeah.
And I'm researching at the moment at the bird and trout knife, as I said. I have to consult a few people that are using, I have a lot of people that shoot pheasant, partridge even, and quail, and what's the other? Pigeon was another one somebody mentioned to me the other day. There's pigeons everywhere. So they want something that can just pop out the breast, and like pigeon, they're very small and delicate. You'd squash the.
Yeah.
But that's something I'm looking at to develop.
Brilliant.
Trout as well. So again, that'll probably be a bit cheaper because it's not using as much material.
Yeah.
So
we look forward to seeing them. They will be really cool. So you're starting at $239 for the
hunting ones, yeah.
And you can
go up to depending on so I have 67 layer BG10 there at the minute. It's the most expensive stainless that I can get. You can go Damascus as well, but you're talking into high hundreds there for some of those pieces,
So you've catered, I think, for the quality and for what you're getting there for that type of price. Is great value for money. And as you say, if you want to go to the higher end, and something a little bit more bespoke and a little bit more.
So within reason, we can customize the handles and the finishes within reason. Yeah. Some people want carbon fibre. Now carbon fibre is just an outrageous price. There's some lovely pieces of carbon wheels and stuff out there at the minute, but you're talking. I priced one recently there. You're talking €40 for each side, so it's €80 just costing me just for the handles.
Yeah.
So you can't buy them like that. You got to buy them in bulk, and you got to buy them in bigger quantities.
So you can see quite quickly how just for the two sides. That's without working them, without attaching them, without the knife.
And a lot of suppliers they won't send you a small amount. You've got to get
which is, I suppose, understandable too.
Yeah.
In this.
Yeah.
So look, I would be. You've already have one, Rob. I'd be urging people to check it out, check out the website, and head on over to Smyth Knives and
look at it. We're fairly accessible. Any questions people will ask. I had a couple of emails today from Americans looking to come, and they've got a short window to come and visit the workshop. Within reason, I'll try to accommodate as best as I can. And for a lot of people, it's hard to make a decision without seeing it. So the claw, if you look at it on a picture, geez, I'm not sure about that. But when you put it you need to put it in your hand and have a play with it, have a feel for it.
Yeah.
It has to feel comfortable in your hand. But generally, that's part of the design process. Is that it's aesthetically pleasing, but it's also kind of ergonomically pleasing as well. And that's, as I said, there's a lot of steps in development process to get it to that stage.
Yeah, and I think you've done fantastically well, Paddy. Congratulations and continued success. Thanks a million for coming down. It's been
anytime.
It's been a pleasure.
Thanks
been a
for
pleasure,
the invite.
and we look forward to seeing the success.
I like how that.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Paddy.
Appreciate the invite, lads.